Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this month's Human Rights Heroes podcast. I'm Virginia Bennett, the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor at the Department of State. Today, I am pleased to welcome Fredy Peccerelli, a founder and the Executive Director of the Guatemalan Forensic Anthropology Foundation, FAFG. The FAFG is a nonprofit organization that carries out forensic examinations into killings during the Guatemalan Civil War and genocide. FAFG has more than 2,000 cases under investigation and works nationally with families and communities requesting forensic investigations to establish the place of mass graves, family member identification, and as a part of criminal investigations. Fredy, I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to sit down with you today to talk about your experience. Can you maybe just start by telling us about your own background? I know you grew up in New York.
Yeah, the story of how I got involved in this is long, but I did grow up in New York. I lived in the Bronx for a little while, then in Brooklyn, and believe it or not, that had a lot to do with shaping me as an adult, especially in the 80s. I met Dr. Snow, however, in 1994. Clyde Snow is the person that introduced me to this, and I grew up wanting to be Indiana Jones, and I went to this meeting in Atlanta to try to meet all the archaeologists, and what they were saying was it wasn't as exciting as the Spielberg movie. And so I went back to the hotel a bit disappointed, and I opened the program, and I saw that there was a presentation called Exhuming the Past from Guatemala to Kurdistan. And I went to see Dr. Snow give the presentation, and as soon as I saw the first picture of a grave with some young archaeologists around it, I knew then it was as if I was struck by lightning. And immediately I went up to Clyde, and he invited me to come to Guatemala in January of 95, 22 years ago. And I've been there ever since. I fell in love with the possibility of giving people hope. Forensics in itself is very important because it's the scientific part of it. But the human part of it, what it means to have someone disappeared for 3 decades, I don't want to fully understand ever. And I say that because through these last 22 years, I have learned that although I've listened to thousands of family members, I will never, ever understand the pain of living with that every day. And that's one of the most important things that we should understand. That although we might work with these families and we might try to contribute and search along them and walk with them, we will never really know what it means, and you will never know. No one will ever know unless it happens to you. So I'm okay not fully understanding, but every day I learn something new. These families are amazing. This process is led by women, which has been incredible to work side by side with women like Carolina Farfan and Rosalina Tuyuk and many others in Guatemala. It's been incredible.
Their determination is really inspiring, isn't it?
Their determination is impressive. I often think that I am ahead of this process, but I realize that I'm only ahead because they're pushing really strongly behind me. And there's been many times when I've thought about stopping and leaving and through many different obstacles, and then you look at them and they have become selfless. They are looking for their loved ones, but because they haven't been able to find them, they look for others' loved ones and in their communities, their friends, their families. It's incredible what these women have accomplished, not only in Guatemala, in different places, wherever we have worked, in Sri Lanka and in Mexico and in Colombia now, we find these incredibly brave, powerful women leading this process.
And so is that the common denominator across all of those conflicts, these incredible women who are left behind?
There's several common denominators. One of them, of course, are the women that are left behind. But the other is the lack of interest from the state to search for these disappeared loved ones. For example, for me, when growing up in New York, and I saw what happened at the World Trade Center, it really touched me. But when I saw what the state of New York, the city of New York, the U.S. as a country was doing to identify the remains of these people, I said, you see, that's what I'm talking about. Every little piece of bone matters to the family. Every little part of that person's body represents a life. I want to do that for these people. I want to do that for Guatemalans. Because although I'm a New Yorker, I'm a Guatemalan first. And I don't think New Yorkers are more or less important than anyone. So we should be able to do that for those people in Guatemala. And that's one of the things that I find, that in a lot of these places, the perpetrators are still in power. And that creates a distance and a lack of interest in trying to find the truth, in trying to solve these crimes, and in obviously obtaining justice.
And so do you feel that not just in giving hope to these victims' families, but giving evidence to the prosecution, have you gotten enough traction with the work that you've been doing in terms of bringing the perpetrators to justice?
Well, when we started this work in Guatemala 22 years ago, there was no real hope of justice. There was one person that always said, do it scientifically. Make sure you put it in the reports. Make sure the reports are written so the prosecutors and judges can understand them. Make sure that they reproduce the actual evidence. And it was Clyde. Clyde is the person behind this movement. He's the one that never let us forget. And there was many times when we thought about becoming a humanitarian effort where you would just recover the bodies and give them to the families, and that was enough. It isn't enough. It doesn't recover the actual truth, and it doesn't document it in a way that it can be reproduced and used as evidence in a court of law. And so chain of custody is important, documentation, photography. These are all things that eventually give a different way of importance to what we're finding. So it's not only about the truth, but it's also about being objective in presenting this truth so other people can interpret it. Mm-hmm. These other people in these cases happen to be prosecutors and judges, and hopefully society as a whole in Guatemala eventually.
It's worth reminding, I think, when you look around at the world today where there are conflicts, whether you look at Aleppo and what is happening there or any number of other places, that time doesn't shield people from justice as long as you and others like you are gathering the facts and the evidence. Do you think that that ideal really helps the people of Guatemala to move forward, knowing that there is this effort that's ongoing, even as long of duration as it is?
I think what has happened in Guatemala is that, most of the population, most of the victims of the crimes of the conflict are Mayan. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the Maya have been oppressed for a long time. They're not in it for revenge. They're not in it for reparation. They're in it for dignification. They want to dignify their loved one. They want to have a place to lay a flower and conduct a Mayan ceremony. They want to have the basic, simple things that we're all entitled to when it comes to having a loved one respected and having a place to talk to them. However, once you do that, you empower people. And then what happens after you empower families, I don't know. Some of those families would want to follow the track to justice, I hope, but it's up to them. Some of them don't. It's really up to them, and that's what gives me hope. The idea that we are bringing these families, connecting these families, and sometimes you do get explosions of requests for justice, and you do get systems, like even in Guatemala, where a genocide case can be tried, or now where we are, in the midst of a investigation of a case that, in a former military base, we recovered 565 bodies. Mm-hmm. And we're in the process of identifying those. And those people want justice.
That was the base. It's Creon Paz.
Yes,
is the one where I know in your TED Talk that went viral with almost 700,000 hits. There was a turn of phrase that you used about the irony of peacekeepers being trained on top of bodies. And it really stuck with me because, again, the duration of time that has elapsed, probably those peacekeepers training on top of bodies didn't really know, right? But the importance of shining a spotlight on that is just,
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think there is, hopefully, even in institutions like in military institutions that at some point participated in these crimes. The crimes were actually committed by individuals, and there was orders given by individuals. So it's not the institution itself. And through time, we hope that there is a generational break so that the younger generation can say, wait a second, we don't support this. And maybe those soldiers that were trained in that military base, when they're stationed in the Congo or in Haiti, would realize when they know that they were walking on top of lives, they were walking on top of families' hopes. And hopefully it will make them understand that it's important to get this out so that everyone knows about it.
well, certainly Finding Oscar as a film in the story of reuniting him with his biological father and all of that. I mean, it's just, it really pulls at your heartstrings. But again, I would just say, from the perspective of the U.S., I think that my colleagues who were serving in Guatemala in the 80s were closely watching. And it's a good reminder of the importance of speaking out and highlighting and shining a spotlight on injustice when we see that occurring, not leaving it shrouded in secrecy. It's always important to make sure that that is known. So for all the work that you do to uncover the facts, as brutal as many of them are, I would just say thank you. I mean, it's an inspiring element to humanity in that regard. So thank you very much.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I just want to add that, Finding Oscar, it has really been what the title says. It has been, I have found not only Oscar, I have found
Sure.
Scott and Ryan, and we have together discovered that we've created a tool. I know it's a documentary and it's art, but what it is a way of making people understand what happened in Guatemala, identifying with the people of Guatemala, and understanding that this happened only a country away. We are neighbors with the U.S., and that people like Oscar, because of what happened to him, have very few opportunities in Guatemala, and that's the reason they come here. And so it's a story about today. It's a story about migration. It's a story about the massacre. It's a story about the incredible brave women who pushed this process forward. And somewhere in the middle there's forensics and us trying to contribute and do a little piece. But for me, it's a story about hope. It's a story about, even in places like Guatemala, things can be solved and we can move forward. And hopefully it will give people and families, even in Aleppo, some hope, and in other places, because there's still things to be done. And these families are not alone, and we have to make sure that they know that they're not alone.
Many thanks, Fredy, for taking the time to be here today. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Human Rights Heroes. We hope you will tune in again next month and follow us on Facebook at state_DRL and Twitter at StateDRL to learn more about the State Department's human rights and democracy programs.